So now I'm going to be handing things over to our presenters today. We have Catherine Dunbar, our Vice President of Services and Systems Excellence, as well as Lindsay Moore, our Project Coordinator. And again, they'll be covering strengthening services, supporting families, and improving lives across Maryland. So I'll hand things over to Catherine and Lindsay. Presentation's yours.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Lindsay is going to start today.
That is right. We are so happy to be here with you. We had an opportunity to provide 4 webinars to advocates and their families in the state of Maryland, and we are excited to do that with family members for these 4 sessions. This is through our partnership with Liberty and DDA, which we're going to explain more, but we wanted to share with you about who we are, first of all. And we are the Council on Quality and Leadership. We go by CQL, another acronym for you. Our vision is a world of dignity, opportunity, and community for all people. So not just some people, but really truly all people. Anyone with any type of disability, their family, their communities around them. And our mission is dedicated to the definition, measurement, and improvement of personal quality of life. What this more simply means is we are not just auditors when we collaborate with organizations who provide services. We really are partners with organizations to improve the quality of life for people supported. We're not just looking at compliance, which is important, but we're looking at all the things that make people's lives really rich and wonderful. And we do that through utilizing data and training and research in our partnerships with both organizations and states, which we're going to talk about more. What you should know about us is basically we partner with both organizations and states to provide consultation, training, and any type of support so that they can do all the things that they need to do for your loved one. We're going to share next a little bit about our history, our long history of how we came to be who we are today, for a little bit of background, and I will play that now.
The history of CQL, the Council on Quality and Leadership. Since 1969, CQL has been a leader in working with human service organizations and systems throughout the world to continuously define, measure, and improve quality of life and quality of services for youth, adults, and older adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities and psychiatric disabilities. CQL's vision is a world of dignity, opportunity, and community for all people. CQL believes that every person deserves respect, dignity, opportunity, and to be included in the community, whether they have a disability or not. That vision drives our mission of being dedicated to the definition, measurement, and improvement of personal quality of life. CQL has a long and rich history of conducting accreditation, training, certification, research, and consultation. We were formed in response to the injustices and deplorable treatment of people in public institutions being brought to light in the late 60s, early 70s. In 1969, a national planning committee under the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Hospitals, now the Joint Commission, including industry leaders like AAIDD, the ARC, the Council for Exceptional Children, and United Cerebral Palsy, led to the creation of the organization which is now known as CQL, the Council on Quality and Leadership. The first edition of standards, which contained over 700, was developed by CQL in the early 1970s in an effort to end the inhumane treatment and abuse of people with intellectual disabilities in state institutions. CQL then took on a leadership role in developing expectations for community-based services, which were the basis for landmark court decisions like Wyatt v. Stickney. Federal courts later merged CQL standards into legal settlements in Texas, North Dakota, California, Arkansas, West Virginia, and other states. CQL was reorganized as an independent, not-for-profit organization in 1979, most commonly known as the Accreditation Council. Anchor and the Autism Society were added to the founding team of organizations at this time. CQL continued to develop new and updated national consensus standards throughout the 1980s. The Healthcare Financing Administration, HCFA, now known as Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, based its regulations on the CQL standards, which were ultimately published in CQL's 1984 edition of Standards for Services. In 1987, the revised Standards for Services for People with Developmental Disabilities was published. In 1990, CQL began work on what were then called the Outcome-Based Performance Measures, now known as the Personal Outcome Measures. We will talk more about them in just a minute. In 1997, the organization was renamed the Council on Quality and Leadership, or CQL. The Quality Measures Model was introduced in 2005, integrating multiple CQL tools, including shared values, basic assurances, responsive services, personal outcome measures, and community life, all into one cohesive package. CQL's What Really Matters initiative came to life in 2010 and outlined 34 success indicators that characterize person-centered supports and promote personal quality of life outcomes, which together result in person-centered excellence. Now back to the personal outcome measures. In the early 1990s, CQL realized that people who use services needed to be included at the table. CQL began work on the now internationally recognized personal outcome measures. Some people refer to the tool as the PALM. CQL invited people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, people with psychiatric disabilities, families, and other thought leaders to participate in focus groups to discuss quality measures. There was a big difference in what people and their families wanted compared with what professionals wanted. The personal outcome measures were developed and piloted in 2 states, at 3 organizations, and then field tested in the US and Canada. In 1993, the first PALM tool with 30 outcomes was published. Over the years, data analysis led to the combination of several outcomes, reducing the number to 25, and then to the 21 we have today. The personal outcome measures were revalidated in 2017 and reorganized under 5 factors. The CQL journey continues with the daily work of establishing real connections between disabilities theory and practice. The CQL portal data system now contains tens of thousands of PALM interviews, as well as hundreds of basic assurances assessments. Quality of life is why CQL is committed to partnering with providers and systems for organizational transformation.
All right, so I know that was a lot of information thrown at you, but we're going to break down some of that so you know why it's more meaningful for you and your family member. But what I want to share is some of our values and principles. Being person-centeredness, before that was a phrase that now we hear very often, really putting the person supported at the center, at the table with their loved ones around them and those most important for planning, goal setting, and not just goal setting like in the plan, but dreaming what their dreams are for the future. We are dedicated to the partnerships that we have, and we commend the state of Maryland for partnering with us because it's such a benefit for organizations as a whole, which you'll hear more about. We're committed to progress and continuing to move forward from the history of institutionalization to the group home setting to continuing to push forward so that people can really live their best life how they want to. So inclusivity and dignity, all of those things are very important to us. I'm going to throw it to Kate, who's going to share more about why we wanted you to know who we are as CQL, why the work that's happening a little bit behind the scenes, and how that can impact your loved ones and your family. Catherine, are you there?
My apologies. Thank you, Lindsay. I didn't turn on the audio, is always helpful. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to chat a little bit about the history of our relationship with DDA and the involvement of Liberty Healthcare. So many years ago, we were approached by the department to discuss network accreditation, which we will get more into detail about here in just a few minutes. And we know the system wants to change to improve quality services for people. So that is essentially why we're here. We have a group of staff and various experts that will work with DDA via Liberty to improve services in Maryland. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Liberty Healthcare, they are a company that focuses on quality management, and they work within a lot of states and a lot of systems doing various quality measures. So the department contracted with Liberty Healthcare to support them in with improving strategies in data management and also in network accreditation, which is where we come in. So CQL is associated with a contract with Liberty Healthcare to support network accreditation and the goals that they would wish to achieve. So Liberty essentially is gathering the data that we're going to use to help the system move forward. So what we do with, the next slide, please. So how we're partnering with DDA is that we're providing, and we have provided, the resources and the tools for Liberty to gather the data that is required for network accreditation. And we certify staff, the Liberty staff, to do this, to make sure that all the information gathering that we're doing, which we'll talk about the tools here in just a second, to make sure that the data is in alignment with CQL's values and that they are reliably using the tools. So we provide the tools, we make sure that everyone can apply the tools, and then we work with the state in a variety of ways, including using some of our resources to help guide their practices in rights, in informing people, and helping the system move forward. There's a whole process to network accreditation, but put very simply, it's a framework for quality monitoring and enhancement to move services forward and to improve services. And one of the things that we do, we talk to a lot of people when it comes to network accreditation. And some of those people are obviously people receiving services and providers, but it's just as important to talk to family members and other parts of and various stakeholders. So it may sound a little bit complicated, but it's really just kind of like being a lifeguard. And it may sound a little bit complicated, but it's similar to that, where, you know, if we're Red Cross, we're the ones certifying the lifeguards, and then Liberty is serving as a lifeguard. So the lifeguards, Liberty, are watching and ensuring the safety of everyone at the swimming pool, which is where the place people receive services. So we currently accredit Tennessee's Department of Disability and Aging. We've been doing this for quite some time, and over 10 years now. And some of the things that they have witnessed happening are in improving services are, They've seen systems around dignity and risk improve, where people are understanding and exercising their rights. The person-centered planning process has greatly improved to empower people and their families to guide the process. They've also seen more responsive services where people are receiving the services that they need. And we're going to show a brief video where we talk about how the network accreditation process has impacted Tennessee.
Accreditation has allowed us to create programs that help streamline opportunities for independence. CQL has been a great partner in allowing us to do that.
These tools and these accreditation processes, it allows us to go in with a fresh perspective. It has us asking questions that we may be forgetting to ask about the folks we serve, and allows us to see into areas that we've ignored possibly.
Well, our goal at the end of the day is always to drive independence for Tennesseans with disabilities, right? So personal outcome measures, basic assurances that they can have around service delivery is at the forefront of everything that we do, and trying to drive change in Tennessee to make sure that Tennesseans with disabilities feel empowered, know that they can live independently, can actually pursue the American dream for the first time in their life.
Because I never wrote a check before. And I never had my own money either. Buffalo Rivers learned me to write checks. I learned to count my own money to see how much money I have.
I think we've noticed throughout the last several years with this accreditation process, at least from our personal perspective, it's given us a new set of tools to serve the people we support. It helps us to refine the services. It helps us to get more person-centered. It helps us to find those weak spots that we aren't finding without the tools.
I like to write and play on my computer and laptop and read. Go to the library, look at the books and read and color. There's a coloring class up there too at the library.
The quality assurance processes, the CQL interview processes, it allows us that perspective. It gives us the ability to go in and start to look at things from different angles, ask questions that probably no one's asked in a long time. And, oftentimes we've found out we were working off of assumptions, or we were working off of routines and tradition. And you don't grow without questioning those things. And it's been an amazing tool to do that with.
I work at Domino's and I do little everything. I just like working there.
Well, you definitely want the consistency statewide. I mean, you've got people that obviously they can move from provider to provider, but we're all working under the same umbrella.
And the accreditation aspect of that with CQL has allowed us to expand that umbrella to cover all of the programs that we have inside Tennessee to drive change.
I will say in the 25 years that I've worked in this business, it does feel more like a partnership today than it ever has. And that's always been, welcomed. And we're glad to see that, that transformation. And I do think a lot of this accreditation process has played into that and, helped make that happen. When everyone's working off those same tools and philosophies, it puts us all communicating in the same language, so to speak, because it allows for us to all kind of have that same set of values, those same set of standards.
I'm a servant at the very heart of who I am. And so being able to help people for the first time actually live out the dreams they've envisioned for themselves has created an awesome opportunity for me. So I wouldn't trade my job for any other job in the world. And I'm hoping that I continue to get to do this for as long as I can.
That was just a little bit from Commissioner Brad Turner and an agency in Tennessee that provides services. So, I would like to remind everyone that systems change takes time. And even though the state of Tennessee has been accredited by us for quite a few years now, they're still evolving and still trying to address some underlying issues that are just going to take time to work out. There's no magic bullet. We're not going to be able to solve every problem overnight, certainly. And there are lots of changes happening now, and we're going to be talking to more and more people about the impact of systems change and what they would like to see in the future. But first, Lindsay is going to discuss some of the tools that we use to collect the data. She's going to explain these so they can help everyone understand how these are going to inform the changes moving forward.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, these tools are really great. There's two tools that we use, what we call the POM, the personal outcome measure, and the basic assurance. And the POM, the personal outcome measure, it's an interview process where we sit down one-on-one with someone supported to learn who they are and what's most important to them in their life, what their wants, what their desires and their dreams are, to be able to provide that information back to the organization. And what's really cool about these interviews is that when we do a lot of them, we then have really specific data about what one organization is doing well or could improve upon, as well as the state of Maryland as a whole. So this is a unique tool that starts with one individual person. And then over time, as we do more interviews, we can see those trends and patterns of the areas of needed improvement. But a little bit more about this, it really is that person-centered discovery process where we're exploring the presence, importance, and achievement of these areas of people's lives. It really supports them to achieve the things that they want to. And through the personal outcome measure interviews, people receiving services share what really matters to them. And then what I want to show you is if you look at the first few here, maybe 1 through 4, these are the areas that organizations typically look at, right? They're compliance areas, and these are important. We want people to be healthy and safe. And when people moved out of institutions, this was a really high priority, and most organizations generally do this pretty well, while not really addressing some of these other areas that are quite important for someone's best quality of life, right? I don't say my favorite things about my life or that I am healthy and safe. If you ask me my favorite things about my life, it would be the time I spend with my family, when I achieve things that are important to me. That's the really sweet, juicy things of life. And that personal outcome measures focuses on all of those areas. So there's the 21 outcome measures organized into 5 different groups. And it's an opportunity to ask questions people might not normally be asked by their providers. And it's a way to dig in and make sure they're happy with each area of their life and that they're really in control of their life with, of course, the support of their loved ones. So this really is valuable insight into the lives of both children, youth, adults, and older adults with or without disabilities. This is a great tool for either. And it covers all of these topics in depth, and it can be one interview or interview over time, but it's an opportunity for organizations to know what types of supports are they not providing? Do people want to be more connected to their friends or explore more or a variety of social roles or be more involved in the social roles that they have? And how can services that are being provided be directed in that way rather than some of the goals or outcomes we typically see around health and safety, which is of course important, but how do we go above and beyond just those things? So this is the individualized tool that we use and that Liberty is going to be using. We also have a POM that is geared specifically to young adults and youth. But at this time, this is their Liberty is using this specific tool. What we expect is over time that they might as well use the youth and POM because we've seen that occur in other states. But Liberty's just getting started, and I have so much hope for where the systems are going in terms of quality enhancement. It's just really positive movement so far. So the POM, we share this because you might be asked to participate in a POM, your loved one, or asked to be interviewed after they participate in that when being reviewed by an organization. So I don't expect it to happen tomorrow or any time in the near future, but at some point, maybe in the next few years, you might come across this POM at another time and have a little bit more information about why that can be meaningful and valuable for your loved one. The next tool is the Basic Assurances Self-Assessment. Again, a lot of language here, but really this is the assessment we use to look at an organization specifically. You'll see on here those compliance type factors like protection from abuse and neglect, best possible health, people have safe environments, but you're also going to see things like staff resources and supports. How are organizations individually supporting their staff members? Are there systems in place to retain really great staff so that your loved ones have the best staff possible for longer periods of time? Are there positive supports in place? What type of supports are occurring? Are people making the choices about what the day looks like from day to day? Continuity and security here, this is around finances. Are the organizations financially strong so that if there are, like recently, potential funding changes that may or may not occur, we're all kind of waiting to see what happens next, that the organization can continue supporting your loved one for a period of time. Basic assurances, we also look at organizational practices around rights, restricting people's rights, and are they being provided all the tools and strategies they need to be as independent as possible? And I hope you notice here that factor 3 is all about natural support networks and the systems and practices that an organization has to ensure people are maintaining the relationships that are important to them in their life, keeping them informed and involved in the organizational practices. So that first tool is really one individual person, whereas this basic assurance that Liberty is going to be using to look at the organization as a whole, but really geared through the lens of how people want their life to look. We've got a quote here from a CEO in Maryland who their organization has already gone through this process. They've had several people interviewed using the POM tool, and they've used that basic assurance organizational tool. He calls it the survey here, but the survey was very different and focused on issues that most of us really do find important, but get swept under mountains of regulations. Your visit reawakened the reason that I got into the field in the first place and gave me and others in the agency a renewed sense of direction on the truly important issues. So we love hearing that kind of feedback. It's really helpful. But I also hope you recognize this is a long-term process of data gathering, of evaluation, analysis, making decisions, and then that being incorporated into more policies, regulations, and expectations. But we're at a really good point, a starting point of what this can look like long-term for organizations in Maryland and those people that they support.
Thank you, Lindsay. First, I want to talk a little bit about what Liberty is currently doing in the data collection phase. And they are going to organizations where they are conducting a basic assurances review. So those 9 things that Lindsay just talked about. And they cover a wide range of ideas and principles. So like Lindsay said, the basic assurances take a look at the quality of the quality of supports through the lens of the organization and the personal outcome measures. Look at the quality of services as defined by the person. So, Lindsay used the example of what's most important to her. Right now, the most important thing, to some people is going to be different than it is, tomorrow. What's important right this second to me may be, staying warm because it's really cold outside right now where I live. And tomorrow it's supposed to be a lot warmer. So that's not going to be as important. Or today I feel very healthy. Tomorrow I might feel sick. So we understand that how people define their outcomes is going to change. So the personal outcome measures is a snapshot in time with where the person is currently at in their lives, and they define that outcome. So it's not, that outcome is also defined with the supportive people. So we look at the supports that are in place for that person too. So Liberty is now doing a random sample of people in various services within the state, and they are conducting personal outcome measures. And the agencies that provide the services are having basic assurances reviews conducted. So all of that data and those thousands and thousands of data points are going to help us inform DDA to be responsive to the changes people want to see. That does not mean everybody is going to get everything they want. Unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world. I certainly wish we did. But one of the goals of network accreditation is for states to be more responsive to people's needs. The people directly via provider, if they have, if there's a certain provider doing those services. We also are moving towards a more collaborative approach among the system stakeholders. And what I mean by system stakeholders are all of those people who are working with and adjacent to DDA and the services that they provide. So regional centers, surveyors, provider agencies, organizations that, family organizations, people on the go, advocacy organizations, all of those people that are involved in impacting the services someone receives. So the basic assurances and the personal outcome measures will help us target the areas of improvement and help us get a lot more involvement within the system from advocates like everyone on this call to really, have a positive impact on people's services. So people are getting the services that they need and want. So this it's a further shift toward building a culture of collaboration among providers and DDA. So people receiving services are upfront and center within those systems changes. We want to make sure that people are receiving appropriate supports to exercise control over their own lives, reach their full potential, and lead healthy and fulfilling lives, just like the mission of DDA. So what we've been doing is on the next slide, there's a kind of roadmap to where DDA is within the accreditation process. And so the first step that we took, we call capacity building. And so we focus most of our time here training and supporting Liberty staff, introducing ourselves to each other, getting to know each other's values between Liberty, DDA, and CQL. So we did a lot of training. We have certified several POM interviewers, so people that can conduct the personal outcome measures, which is a valid and reliable tool that is used across the country and in several other countries. Currently, agencies in Ireland, New Zealand, Canada, Australia, there are lots and lots of different countries that are using the POM. We also certified basic assurance reviewers. And when we certify a staff, or when we certify a Liberty staff and the personal outcome measures and the basic assurances review tool, we spend several weeks training with them side by side. We have lots of materials that we use, a lot of training materials that we use. And then there's a reliability component of 85% with both the basic assurances and the personal outcome measures. And then we recertify that reliability every other year because we want to make sure there isn't any drift. We meet with the teams routinely to talk about their practices, any kind of, we're always available to answer questions and support them in any way that they need. So we've done through kind of the first step of these. Liberty also has people who are trained to teach the personal outcome measures, and that is a resource that they can provide to agencies throughout the state. So they are supported to do that also. We're in the process now of getting together some resources for getting feedback from various stakeholders via different types of surveys and town halls. So we'll be doing some meetings during Zoom. We may do some meetings in person. It really depends on what how people communicate best. And then, through written surveys, we're doing that. We have also reviewed the essential policies and procedures of DDA when it comes to disability support, regulations, things like that. Last year, we did a series with advocates on different things that CQL provides. We will continue those relationships with people. And then the Liberty certified trainer started teaching about a year and a half ago, probably a little longer than that. Time flies for sure. One of the next steps is where we will work with DDA to evaluate where they think they are. And some of this will be provided by the data that we are collecting and have collected through the basic assurances and the personal outcome measures. Liberty will continue to visit with people and have conversations with people. We'll also be having CQL will also be having conversations with people via advocacy training and other stakeholder events. Every year throughout the process, we gather the data and help Liberty analyze that data and to continue to inform DDA on future steps they may want to take to ensure quality services. And then full accreditation will be granted once these steps are completed. And we will just continue the process of supporting the system to move forward. So one of the things that CQL does is a lot of data collection, and we didn't want to put in a bunch of data related slides, but Lindsay's going to talk about one of these to kind of explain some of the things that we've collected over the last few years.
Yeah, so this is, this is a very person-centered process, and we recognize there are ways in which to emphasize and enhance people's lives by focusing on staff development. And what the data reflects is that when organizations implement ongoing staff development strategies and practices, that emergency department visits actually decrease by 40%, which is pretty astounding. We often think that just by looking at health and safety type compliance issues can promote people's health, but when we focus on these other areas as well, that's shown to be true. We've also seen data reflect that when agencies implement ongoing staff development, there are 61% lower injuries. And as well as when they focus on staff development, there is 62% lower instances of abuse and neglect. So we have a ton of these data points. Also things like when people are able to have visitors whenever they want, abuse and neglect decreases. which just makes sense, right? So what we're trying to do is partner with organizations in the state of Maryland to enhance, evolve their regulations and practices to ensure that people are, of course, healthy and safe, but also have access to their personal possessions, which also decreases instances of challenging behavior. So I mentioned how we may use that POM, those interview processes, to talk to people one-on-one, people receiving services. But with using the basic assurances that I talked about, I should have mentioned how you also may be involved is when we meet with organizations, we do focus groups, we do one-on-one conversations with people supported and their family members, because that perspective is so valued by our organization, CQL. So you may be asked to participate in a focus group, and we encourage you to do so because your input does matter to this process. And again, it is not a fast overnight process, but it is a process that we are dedicated to of true quality enhancement, like we have seen in the state of Tennessee. So we are looking forward to what we see in Maryland over the next few years. And I want to share how you can connect with us, more information about us. We're on Facebook, we are on LinkedIn, YouTube. We've got a channel on there. You can also visit us at our website. Seth is dropping some links for you there if you want to learn more about some of these tools. But I just want to reiterate in summary, our partnership is with the state of Maryland, who is partnering with Liberty. Liberty is an organization that specializes in quality management. So they're looking at quality of organizations for DDA, and we are providing the tools that Liberty's using to do that. And those links to learn more about those are in the chat. But we also, on our website, have a ton of webinars. They're mostly geared towards organizations, but I think you may be interested in seeing how we support organizations in really focusing on people maintaining and building their natural support networks and why that's so important, as well as some of the research that we've done. There's an immense amount of research, but it's a really easy to navigate website. At the top, you can just click, I'm pretty sure it just says research and learn more. We have a lot of different articles about the work that's being done at organizations internationally, and what best practices really does look like in the field. And I see some of the comments here, and I know there's still a lot of challenges that people and their families face in terms of funding and services. And I really look at where we're at now as a continuation of getting people out of institutions and truly living in the communities with the people that they want to live with, in the life that they want to live with. And CQL is a support, a partner in that process. And we look forward to that progress in the future. Catherine and I, we have provided our personal information. You can feel free to email either of us, kdunbar@thecouncil.org, or me, L. Moore, @thecouncil.org. And we're happy to answer any question that we're able to. We have a lot of resources on advocacy, and we have a lot of people within our organization that are themselves experts at different topics. So if Catherine and I do not have that answer, we dig into all of our resources internally and try to provide whatever we can to best support you and your family member. And with that, I hope you hear, we want you to feel knowledgeable about those things that's happening behind the scenes and all these letters that are thrown out and all these different partnerships. But this is, if you hear about any of these tools, you're asked to participate in any type of review process with Liberty, these are the tools that would be used in that process.
So we can kind of look to a couple attendee questions. One thing to toss out there is that there were a handful of questions that were very, very specific to the state of Maryland, to DDA. Those would be best addressed by Maryland, by DDA. So we encourage you to kind of reach out to them directly for those. We can obviously speak at length about CQL, our tools, network accreditation, the relationship to Liberty and DDA. But again, if it's very specific to the state or DDA, it would really be best to contact them directly. So the questions that we were ready to address, one was asking, once DDA is accredited, does it follow that all DDA providers will be required to be accredited?
No, not at this time. We are not expecting that. That is also not the case currently in Tennessee, where not all Tennessee providers are required to be accredited. There are some that are accredited by CQL, that are some that are accredited by other bodies. Not every organization is always a good fit for CQL and our values. We look at things a little differently than other accrediting bodies, and it is up to the organization, of course, if they would like to be accredited by us. There are currently a few organizations in Maryland that are accredited by us, and you can see those organizations on our website. If you just go to the accreditation tab and follow the prompts to get to those organizations that are currently accredited by CQL.
And I'll put a link in the chat box so you can view all of those accredited organizations in Maryland. I can put those in right now. We had another question specific to CQL certification. So this is in reference to being a valid and reliable personal outcome measures interviewer or trainer. If Lindsay and Catherine, if you want to address anything related to that, otherwise I will also, again, be putting in a chat link specific to certification. But if you want to talk just in general about that process or the personal outcome measures.
Sure. Lindsay, feel free to jump in. So when someone is certified, let's specifically talk about the personal outcome measures. The steps are taking a class in the personal outcome measures where you actually practice the skills of interviewing someone. And we talk about how to interview different people and learning about communication styles, learning about, people's definitions and, things of that nature. So you can really try to get to know someone in a relatively short period of time and learn what their personally defined outcomes are. And so you take a class. If you take the online version, the webinar version, it's a 3-day class. The in-person version is typically 4 days. Again, you practice your skills by doing interviews with people receiving services. And typically you'll be paired with someone in that same class. So first you have to take the class. Then you practice interviewing people using the personal outcome measures tool. And then after that, you typically will attend a coaching day where you and up to 3 other people can watch one of CQL staff conduct a personal outcome measure interview, and you'll have conversations after that. So you can ask questions, and the outcome measure interviewer can answer them. You'll be able to see some of the tips and tricks that CQL uses to interview, in addition to the ones that you've already learned in class. And then you will hopefully conduct some more practice interviews. And then CQL staff will observe you conduct an interview with a person and then see how much your answers agree. So Lindsay, do you have anything you want to add?
So that's to be a POM interviewer. And it's a really in-depth process with lots of practice, like Catherine was saying. But I also want to share a little bit about how we educate and train the Liberty staff on using our tools. And it is one of, I have to say, the most intensive processes that I have personally been a part of. It's a 4-week process where first they spend 4 full days with one of our certified quality enhancement specialists who review an organization. They do POM interviews and focus groups and conversations with families and the
Let me
organization.
interject just real quick, Lindsay. I'm sorry. What you're talking about here, just to clarify, is certifying in the basic assurances.
Well, I'm just mentioning, I wasn't sure if that was referencing, the question was referencing POM interview certification, or if it was also referencing how we're training Liberty staff. So I was just going
Yes.
to share that that's a very intensive process,
Yes.
collaboration with us, where one whole week they just watch these, use the tools. The next week they participate very little while still observing and learning. The third week they're leading some of those conversations. And then the fourth week, they're doing it all on their own, all this time with some of our employees with them. They're very long days, 10 to 14 hours, because after they spend time with organizations, they spend time just with our quality enhancement specialists, going over in detail what was learned and what information can be provided back to the organization to improve their services. And I see a note here that's related to this of how would this network accreditation process impact people who are provided services, who direct their own services through the self-directed services? And it's a great question, and they would be impacted in the same way anybody else would receiving services. You have the autonomy to choose your services and plan budgets and things like that. But what network accreditation, it would be impacting all organizations to hopefully be meeting best practices in compliance with any enhanced regulation or policy change or expectations by DDA. So you would be impacted in a similar way. And I see another, I'm sorry, Seth, I've got to answer this question. It's my favorite topic. Martha, I appreciate you asking about how we interview people who use a variety of ways to communicate. And I'm assuming, but I'm not sure, that you may have someone that doesn't use a lot of words to communicate in your family, but I have probably a good idea that you know exactly what they like and they don't like, what their favorite foods are, how they like to spend their time, where they like to go, what kind of noise levels are their preferences, smells, environments. So we interview people, we meet them where they're at, we learn as much about them. I love to do interviews with people in their preferred places. So it might be a coffee house. Some people love to go to their organization's office and sit in the boardroom and have interviews, and they like staff to come through and greet them, and I learn about people in that way. While some people love to have interviews at their home with people they love around them, maybe some housemates, and I learn a lot about people in that way too. One of my favorite, one anecdote of that is asking someone who didn't use a ton of words to communicate. I asked him, what would you do if there was an emergency? And his housemate yelled, "You'd call 911." And he looked at me and said, 911. And what I learned in that was maybe he didn't know to call 911 or not, but he has a lot of great support around him. So I'm learning about his friends and his support network in those ways, things that are important to him, even if he's not using a ton of words to communicate. I've interviewed people who only use one eyebrow to communicate. But everyone has their opinions and their preferences, and sometimes it just takes time, spending time with people to learn some of those things. And really importantly, talking to the people that love them most is a really great way to learn more about them.
That's excellent, Lindsay. And so everyone knows too, I did put in a chat link for a webinar that we had conducted a while back about using the personal outcome measures with people who don't use words to communicate. So that's also another resource you can check out and watch. And to kind of piggyback, Lindsay, off what you had said about self-directed services, there are plans to have a webinar for you all about self-directed services. You'll receive information about that when it's available through the same channels that you received the registration information for this session. So just be on the lookout for that, and you can learn more about self-directed services there. We had a question about is the training for CQL or Liberty available as an online course? I'm going to kind of make some assumptions on what that's asking as far as some of the information about the personal outcome measures, some of the information about the basic assurances, maybe the ability to participate in a personal outcome measures workshop. You'll find all of that on our website. As Lindsay referenced, there's literally hundreds of free resources on our site. Many about the personal outcome measures, many about the basic assurances. So you can learn a lot of that same information, those foundational elements of those tools through our website.
I see Chris's question there, and I'm just going to share again that we don't expect the state to require all providers to be accredited or new providers to be accredited. This is a process where DDA and Liberty partnering together are going to be using these tools to evaluate a handful, a representation of organizations to get an idea of what's going on in the state and to make some informed decisions about how to best move forward. So if an organization has the opportunity to participate, we encourage it because it can only benefit them individually as an organization. And we encourage you to participate if that is an opportunity as well.
And then we did get a question about asking, sorry, go ahead, please.
No, just to tag on to what Lindsay was just saying. Note that CQL is accrediting DDA. We are not accrediting, so that doesn't filter down to providers. We're working with DDA, or working with Liberty to accredit DDA. So it's not automatically granted to any other organization within the state, just DDA, if that's helpful.
Another question we did get is, how can people receive information about CQL, network accreditation, all of that? You can, of course, continue to check out our website. You can sign up for our email contact list. Be sure to sign up for DDA's contact list for them to share information. Again, kind of similar channels of social media, email signups, the same ways that you found out about this webinar today. Stay plugged into that and you'll receive updates through those. I am not seeing any other questions come through the Q&A at this point. So if there's, I don't know if there's any other final thoughts that Lindsay or Catherine want to share. Otherwise, we can send everyone off along their day and wrap things up.
No, thank you, everyone. We're looking forward to hosting future webinars to help families and advocates be more informed.
Yeah, I appreciate so much for you being here, and I hope it was helpful just to have a little early knowledge if this ever comes up on your radar. But hopefully you hear more about it in the future and you join us for our next webinar.